First of all, I pay my all respects to Dr. Mohan Bhalerao. I had an opportunity to work with him. When I came here in 1993, he was already an honorary teacher there, honorary professor. And we worked together for many years. And I could learn many things from him. Because coming to Nanded from a different place and knowing the environment here became very easy because he was in the department. Next, I thank Dr. Narwadkar for giving me this opportunity. Actually, I did not like it, but then, okay, I said maybe it is a filler speaker. But then when I heard the name that Dr. Ashish is coming, I liked very much that, okay, I will get the opportunity to spend some time with him. And second, it was Dr. Mohan Bhalerao, CM, becoming a part of it is really an honor. Now, I don't know what is the relation between RPL and PPH, but probably the intention is if a woman conceives following RPL, she should not die from PPH. That must be the reason. Probably the only link I could find. Okay. Now, RPL is a big topic, and when Dr. Narwadkar asked me to prepare a talk on this, and he gave me a liberty that you yourself suggest the topics. Then I started searching literature, and then I found that lectures for symposium on RPL may last for even 2 to 3 days by assembling various speakers, because it is an area which a very little part is covered by gynecologists. There is endocrinologist, there is embryologist, there is physiologist, there is geneticist, and so many people are involved. And even we know what my experience regarding RPL is. I am not an expert of RPL, but only 2 experiences I get. That the patient is happy or the patient stops coming to me. I consider that probably both are my successes. She conceived and went to her original doctor. That may be the reason that she is not coming. It may be another one. But I consider this. And second, yes, I am happy that she conceived. And this is not because of anything that I do different than others. Because this is a topic where everybody gets success. And the success rate for any gynecologist is as high as 60 to 70%. Because as I go further, I'm fully convinced that this is a topic of tremendous controversies. And the biggest cause of this controversial condition is unexplained. And when it is unexplained, there are so many therapies, unexplained therapies, which probably give you a name in the field. Now, RPL, I am going to talk on 2 controversies only because there are many. There are as 30 controversies, and they touch each aspect of RPL. That is definition. Definition, there are tremendous controversies. Causes, there are tremendous controversies. Investigations, which should be done, which should not be done, there are controversies. Therapies, which are the best therapies, which are the therapies should never be practiced, which are the therapies which are very harmful, and which are the therapies which are doubtful. So also the results vary. Now, controversies in RPL, as I said, that from definition there are controversies. Some people call it as miscarriages 2 or more, some say 3 or more. Then the title, you find that some books mention as recurrent pregnancy loss, some mention simply as recurrent miscarriage. Then there are 3 types of, I knew primary and secondary, but now after Dr. Narwadkar gave me this topic and I started rereading, he gave me many opportunities for improvisation. Probably from a distance he always watches me. He said, this is the area this man knows nothing. I must give that topic and he will read. Then I came to know that there is one more, that's tertiary. Primary is, that is a woman who had never had a pregnancy which has crossed 20 weeks, Secondary is she has first pregnancy which crossed 20 weeks, she may not be having a living issue, but then subsequently she miscarried for 2 or 3 times. Tertiary, initial she had miscarriages, 2 or more or 3 or more according to the definition. Then she had a pregnancy which crossed 20 weeks, maybe live or stillbirth, anything. And now again she is suffering from recurrent miscarriages, that is RPL or recurrent pregnancy loss. Now, as regards pregnancies, we should be considered in RPL, there is controversy. Should one include chemical pregnancies? Because since the advent of ART, pregnancies are diagnosed even before the woman misses her period. These are chemical pregnancies, and these are lost. Some people may be including this, and then the data is biased. When such a data is taken for comparison, it is biased. Then there is a clinical pregnancy which we as clinicians usually label of woman misses a period, and the urinary pregnancy test is positive. Then there is histopathological. Some authors take into consideration the histopathological evidence. That is, there are histopathological evidence which shows at least villi there. So there are tremendous controversies. Gestational age. You find the European books, they take pregnancy up to 26 weeks. That only after 26 weeks they call it as you can say before 26, up to 26 weeks they call it as a miscarriage. But in other areas of the world, they take it up to 20 weeks. So these are the controversies. And so regarding causes, there are many controversies. Regarding causes, there are many controversies and investigations, but now yes, right. The causes, there are many causes, the presumed causes, of which only three are accepted, widely accepted, and they are the parental chromosomal abnormality, the uterine structural defects, and the antiphospholipid antibody syndrome. These are the widely accepted. All other causes are suspected but not proven causes like autoimmunity, endocrinopathy, environmental toxins, and various infections. It is estimated that up to 15% of pregnancies result in a loss. RPL affects just 1 to 2% of the couples. Even if cause is found, there may not be a treatment. For example, there is abnormal karyotype into the parents. There may not be a treatment. Only if they advance, that is a womb donor or a sperm donor is taken help of. Despite intensive work, no clear underlying pathology is forthcoming in at least 50% of couples of RPL. And this group, which is more than 50%, is called as unexplained RPL. And it is this area where many times we get successes. Now how common is that repeated miscarriage cannot be identified, and the incidence that all our investigations may fail is as high as 50 to 75% of the cases of repeated miscarriages that no cause can be found for the pregnancy loss. There may be clues about what the problem is, but there is no sure answer. And as there is no sure answer, we don't have a sure therapy. As regards investigations, there are so many investigations which are not routinely recommended. And there are 12 such recommendations that such tests should not be done. And one of the examples is luteal phase insufficiency. Particularly from 12, I have included this one because the drug that we commonly use is one of the progestogens, and it is considered that it will help if there is a luteal phase insufficiency. Now the treatments that are not recommended because there is insufficient proof. There are the treatment or the therapies which do not work in RPL. There are three, and these are ART, endometrial scratching, and vaginal progesterone. Again, we find that the drug which we write maximally, the evidence says that it does not work. It does not work, but still we get success because the majority of the cases, as high as 75%, are because of unexplained RPL. And there are potentially harmful treatments, or three potentially harmful treatments, and that is, one of them is the giving immunoglobulins, or giving the lymphocytes to a woman, and another is high dose of folic acid. This is very important. If you are giving high dose of folic acid, it can bring about autism in the newborn. So the folic acid should not be given in very high doses, it should be given in very restricted or suggested doses. We have 5 milligram tablet, 1/4 tablet or half tablet is enough. So even after 2 miscarriages, there is a 65% chance that your third pregnancy will end in a live birth even without treatment, and this is because of that there is no cause in most of the cases. Now my talk is on these two areas, that is true controversies, progesterone for RPL and cytogenetic studies for RPL. Now this is the controversy that is I faced, and then I studied went to the literature, that a fourth gravida came to me for recurrent pregnancy loss. First, again, now this is an example of secondary RPL. First was a full-time live birth. Second was a 2-month gestation pregnancy loss confirmed by ultrasonography, and she required evacuation. Third was again a 2-month gestational pregnancy loss, which was ultrasound confirmed. And fourth time, when she came to me, she came with the urinary pregnancy test positive report. I wrote a standard prescription, and she raised the controversy. The doctor, during my first pregnancy, which was normal, absolutely normal, this drug was prescribed. In second pregnancy, which I lost, again this drug was prescribed. Third time also, although I changed the doctor wrote the same prescription, and you are also writing the same prescription. And the prescription was one of the progesterone. Then I simply omitted, by recollecting that many patients of recurrent pregnancy loss are unexplained, and the luteal phase defect is not a proven cause of RPL. I omitted the treatment. A routine antenatal care was given to her, and she delivered normally vaginally at term. So this is the controversy, and there are many controversies regarding this particular area, that is progestogens in RPL. Now we have seen, again the revision, that the treatments that do not work, and one of the treatment that is written there in the literature which has evidence is vaginal progesterone. And this test related to progesterone, and that is RPL, is not to be done. That is test for luteal phase insufficiency, that is luteal phase progesterone is not to be done for recurrent miscarriages. And that is the information widely circulated in Europe by the European Society of Human Reproduction and Embryology, that the tests for luteal phase insufficiency are not to be done, money has not to be expended on it, and it should not bring about a psychological stress to the woman. Now, then if you are writing progestogens, it is for whom we are writing, and which progesterone we should write. These are the two areas I am going to address, or the solution probably I may provide with some controversies. In 50 to 75% of women with recurrent repeated miscarriages, no cause can be found for the pregnancy loss. There may be clue about what the problem is, but there is no sure answer. And it is to these cases of unexplained RPL, as there is no explanation, we prescribe progesterone, and actually it forms a part of tender loving care, probably that is the thing that is helping. Progestogens They are also called as progestogens. These are the hormones which have a progesterone-like action on the uterus. That is, a estrogen prime endometrium is changed to secretory phase. These are the drugs, and they are called progestogens because their levels are high in a pregnant woman, and they are shown to protect the pregnancy in some way. Now, progesterone refers to hormone produced in the body. When we say progesterone, it refers to hormone that ovary produces or produced from a plant source, but still chemically and structurally identical to human progesterone, and it is therefore referred to as natural or bioidentical. Means it is identical to ovarian progesterone and it is natural. Now, this natural progesterone means it is not synthesized into the laboratory, but it is extracted from the plant source, and therefore again, yes, it is natural, but it is never from a matter or woman's ovary that we prescribe, that is natural. And the others are called as progestins because they are not natural, they are synthesized into the laboratory, and there are two types that we commonly use in our practice. One is progesterone analogs. They do not have anabolic action, androgenic action, and the examples are dydrogesterone and hydroxyprogesterone caprolate. The other group is testosterone analogs, and because they have androgenic action, they are not prescribed during pregnancy. Their use is limited to gynecology. Now, the two drugs we commonly use, and that is one is natural micronized progesterone and the other is dydrogesterone. The third is 17-hydroxyprogesterone caprolate, but it is the injectable and therefore we'll avoid giving it. Now, I got a book, again Dr. Narwadekar provided me this, and this is a book on recurrent pregnancy loss and mostly deals with controversies. The book has 32 chapters, 313 pages, and many references, The total references exceed more than 1,000. But there are only two areas on which this book talks about controversies, and one is the use of progesterone. There is a debate, that is, should progesterone be used in recurrent pregnancy loss, and a group of authors say yes. There is another chapter, next chapter is that should progesterone be used in recurrent pregnancy loss, and the answer is no, and there is an asterisk there. In the subsequent edition also, the chapter is maintained and further enlarged. And these two chapters, they have taken help of 68 references to come to this conclusion. And the another area is the pre-implantation gene testing. That is again debatable for cases of RPL. Only two areas where they debated. Now, vaginal progesterone, which we use is a micronized vaginal progesterone during early pregnancy, has no beneficial effect in women with unexplained RPL. That is from these guidelines. Furthermore, as progesterone is important during implantation of the embryo, benefit from supplementation may be realized if progesterone is administered from the luteal phase rather than after a positive pregnancy test. Now, we have to understand these statements. We should not misunderstand them. More trials are needed to evaluate oral progesterone and administration of progesterone from the luteal phase. Now, we are not talking about infertility. We are not talking about ART and embryo transfer. We are talking about repeated pregnancy loss. Now, in this patient, the treatment begins after conception. But if you feel like giving treatment before conception, that is just after ovulation, then the number of patients you will be prescribing progesterone will be many and it will be wastage. If you prescribe to 100 women of RPL progesterone in the luteal phase, only 3 may be benefited and 97 because they have not conceived and they will not continue the pregnancy. And every time you will have to carry out some investigations to confirm the pregnancy and then stop the drug. And therefore, they say that the benefit from supplementation may be realized if progesterone is administered from the luteal phase rather than after a positive pregnancy test. But what we do and what we wish to do, that later conceive and then prevent the miscarriage. Now, this micronized natural progesterone in recurrent there was a very big trial, that is a PROMISE trial, with idiopathic recurrent miscarriage, that is unexplained, to receive 400 milligram of vaginal micronized progesterone twice daily, and it was compared with a placebo from time of positive pregnancy to 12 weeks gestation, and they found that there is no difference between the two groups. Means whether you have given progesterone or a placebo hardly matters. Means it is just a wastage. The patient can continue to have pregnancy with placebo, and she can also abort with progesterone. Another RCT involving 700 women also tested whether the same dose of vaginally administered, that is 400 milligram vaginally, natural progesterone, would benefit unexplained recurrent miscarriage patients. But unlike the PROMISE trial, where the progesterone was given after confirmation of pregnancy and began before 12 weeks, this trial commenced treatment in the luteal phase immediately after documentation of ovulation and continued until 28 weeks. And this Egyptian trial, they found significant lower miscarriage rate. The miscarriage rate was half. Women cannot be treated with progesterone supplementation in all cycles until conception. This is the comment of experts on this particular article, that if you take into consideration, then you will have to treat all cases of RPL before they conceive. You may have to start progesterone. Now, unexplained recurrent miscarriage, progesterones are likely to be beneficial, considering synthetic versus natural, and time of commencement is critical. Why? Now, there are two progesterones that we use. One is natural and the other is synthetic, that is dydrogesterone that is used. So one should differentiate. If we want to use natural micronized progesterone, you want that it should help the woman, it should be started in the luteal phase. Before missing a period, in the luteal, just 24 to 48 hours after ovulation. The ovulation is documented by ultrasonography or by LH kit. There one has to start. And therefore they say that what is critical, that time of commencement is critical. But if you are using oral dydrogesterone, it is to be initiated when the fetal heart action can be confirmed, and then the dydrogesterone is effective. So dydrogesterone is effective after the pregnancy is diagnosed by some way, maybe urinary pregnancy test or by ultrasonography. But micronized progesterone is not helpful if it is you can see initiation is delayed till confirmation of pregnancy. A meta-analysis of 10 RCTs. In the hierarchy of evidence, the meta-analysis has tremendous importance. That is, it brings about something called as a strong level A evidence, strong recommendation. And what experts say, it gets the list, and it can only bring about a good, something called as a good practice point. And there, the strength of that evidence is D, and the recommendation is the most poor recommendation. So this is a RCT. It involved 1,586 women with idiopathic RM, that is unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss, and the effects of natural and synthetic progesterone administered during the first trimester and commenced after pregnancy confirmation. Lower miscarriage and higher live births were found in the 8 studies that used synthetic progesterone, that is dydrogesterone. However, included studies spanned more than 60 years. Means even on this, the experts have doubt, because this study, this meta-analysis of 10 RCTs had many such cases, many such group of cases, which were as old as 50 years or 55 years, and they multiple formulations, that is, were given. That is, those olden days 17-hydroxyprogesterone was given, or some other drug called as alenastrone was given, and therefore they say that even this evidence is not enough to say that even the dydrogesterone or the synthetic progestrogens really help in cases of the unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss. Now, collectively, what it says, this data suggests that progesterone is likely beneficial. Likely, you see the terminology used by the experts. That is likely beneficial, may be superior, something like that. So, progesterone is likely beneficial in unexplained recurrent miscarriage. Synthetic progesterone may be superior to natural progesterone, at least when progesterone is commenced after a positive pregnancy test. However, formulation doses and route of administration need to be defined. So, what should be the exact dose and what should be the formulation that needs? Natural progesterone may be beneficial, but should be started in the luteal phase with consideration given to continuing beyond the first trimester. Now, this is the area I will summarize. If at all you want to give progesterone in the luteal phase, you can give both micronized natural progesterone or dydrogesterone, both can be given. But if you want to begin progesterone after the pregnancy is diagnosed, it has to be a synthetic progesterone. It has to be synthetic progesterone, either dydrogesterone or 17-hydroxyprogesterone caprolate. Now, the another area is cytogenetic studies of RPL. Our experience is very limited. Very rarely we advise karyotype. And that too commonly we advise karyotype after 3 repeated pregnancy losses, and we carry out parental karyotype. So again, in 50 to 75% of women with repeated miscarriages, no cause can be found for the pregnancy loss. To these unexplained cases of RPL, progesterone are prescribed. But is progesterone deficiency the cause of unexplained RPL? Probably no. Means if we believe into this, then probably we have found the cause. And the cases of RPL which are little more than 50% would reduce to 30% or 25% unexplained RPL, but no. So what does it mean that the cause needs to be further researched? If we don't believe, the previous part has said that progesterone is not the cause of unexplained recurrent miscarriage, because its prescription does not help all the women of unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss. What does it mean? That the cause of unexplained RPL needs to be further researched. Yes, the base reports has only halved the miscarriage rate, but not totally eradicated the miscarriage rate in unexplained RPL. In a series of 74 women with recurrent miscarriage before 10 weeks of gestation, there was no difference in pregnanedial excretion curves between those women who either miscarried or went to have a successful pregnancy. This is very important. In one of these studies, for example, you can, there are 74 cases. What they did, it was a common group of women. They started they did the progesterone studies in the luteal phase, and they found that the women who miscarried and the women who continued their pregnancy had the same levels, indicating that yes, progesterone is not the cause. And therefore, we have to keep on searching the cause of unexplained recurrent miscarriage. Our present workup recommends cytogenetic tests of parents only after third miscarriage by karyotyping, and we rarely ask for cytogenetic study of the products of conception. And these are the guidelines given by American Society of Reproductive Medicine, that is for recurrent miscarriage. The workup, they say that the first 3, one has to rule out uterine malformation by ultrasonography or 3D ultrasound, APLA testing, endocrine, that is thyroid profile, and parental karyotyping. When this is done, the normal means no cause detected, that is no cause is found, they are normal, that is they are more than 50%, 57%, and this is a group of unexplained RPL. abnormality is found in 42.9 and some explanation we give, and therefore some treatment can be planned there. But for more than 50% cases, there is no explanation, and if we can reduce this group, that is, which is more than 57% up to 60%, some authors say even 75%, our irrational prescription of progesterone can be reduced. Irrational, not only progesterone, but innumerable drugs we write, that can be reduced. So that is the point of research. Now, some authors were doing the cytogenetics of products of conception, and they did by something called as chromosome microarray, and they found that if this is used, the unexplained, which was as high as 60%, is reduced to 42%, reduced to 40 or 42%, and the abnormality is detected 57.7%. So if the POC cytogenetics is done, we get some cause, and the unexplained decreases, and we get explanation in a bigger group. Now, a new you can say workup or a model is proposed, and it combines the American Society of Reproductive Medicine plus products of conception by chromosome microarray. We will be talking what is, briefly I will be telling what is chromosome microarray. So, if this is done, you see the change. The unexplained, which was about 57.1%, had reduced to just 8.2%. In less than 10, the causes of recurrent pregnancy loss remain unexplained, and in almost 92%, we have some explanation. The patient can be given some explanation, some treatment can be planned, and the irrationality can be reduced to less than 10%. Now, this 24 chromosome microarray, why it is called 24? Because we have 22 autosomes. We have 22 autosomes and then 2 sex chromosomes, and therefore it becomes 23 and 24. That is maybe 2X or 1X and 1Y, depending upon whether the products of conception belong to a male or belong to a female. Now here, as against the American Society of Reproductive Medicine and all other societies who used to follow that the previous one schedule, this one. Here, no parental karyotype is done as an initial workup. We used to do parental karyotype as an initial workup. That is, if we get a woman with repeated more than 3 miscarriages, we used to advise, yes, both you have to get tested and you have to give the blood for karyotyping. The workup begins after second miscarriage. Here, these are the 2 important changes here, that instead of doing the parental karyotyping, they do genetic studies, not karyotype, on the products of conception. And this genetic study is not karyotype, but it is microarray, chromosome microarray. And the workup begins not after third miscarriage, but after second miscarriage. Because the patient's concern is safe. And this new model is given by these 2 authors, Papas and difficult to pronounce. The other name. One is from Beirut, the other is from USA. Now, 24 chromosome microarray, what is it? It is nothing but a normal human genome, normal human DNA that are arranged on a film, that is maybe glass or a film, to which the sample DNA is matched. And when we try to match the sample DNA, we get an idea that where the nucleotides are missing, And if the nucleotide is missing at one or many places, then we say that yes, there is some explanation. It is called as a multiplex lab on a chip technology. That it is a highly computerized technology which is loaded in a very small chip, and it studies the entire genome of a human being. POC need not be viable. When we sent POC for karyotyping, many times the report comes that there was no live cell, and therefore, as because there was no living cell, the chromosomes could not be separated and identified because there the products of conception, cells of products of conception have to be cultured. Then we have to arrest the metaphase, separate the chromosomes, take the photographs, and then compare with the normal. It detects submicroscopic chromosomal imbalances. That is, it can detect imbalance as less as 50 to 70, 52 megabase pairs. Now what is this? 5 to 7. It's 50 lakh to 70 lakh bases, nucleotide bases, that is. So if the abnormal chromosomal abnormalities more than this, that can be seen by microscope. But these are, and the microscope misses, that is the karyotype misses submicroscopic malformations of the chromosome. The chromosome microarray can even be performed on DNA extracted from the formalin fixed and paraffin emblem tissues. We commonly get when we get a histopathology report, we get a block. That block can be given for chromosomal microarray. We don't need a living tissue. They can extract DNA from that and carry on. And maternal blood contamination can be known. This is very important because when we send products of conception for karyotype, many times the report comes, and that report is actually the mother's report because the cells that they took for culture is maternal blood, But here, this contamination can be identified and does not affect the results of this particular cytogenetic study. So there it has got so many advantages. And therefore a new algorithm has evolved which provides explanation to more than 90% of RPL cases as against less than 50% with traditional protocols. And now what is this algorithm? That is, it begins just after second miscarriage, and if the patient is with you, she was there with you, and she comes to you, the products of conception when she miscarriages, it can be collected. And now, as I said, that it combines the protocol that is followed by the American Society of Reproduction, that is screen for weight and weight extremes, that is obesity, or the BMI very less, that is less than 18, alcohol and smoking, cavity check, that is uterine abnormalities are to be detected or checked, screen for antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, endocrine testing, that is TSH and TPO, prolactin and HB pathies, and there is no karyotype here, but they have omitted the karyotype, parental karyotype. Instead of parental karyotype, the products of conception, they are subjected for cytogenetic analysis by chromosome microarray. Yes, they say that other than this, one can give vitamin D supplementation and provide psychological support to the patient, telling her that even if we don't get the cause, a natural conception without any medication is possible in as high as 60 to 66% of cases. Now, what are the results? What are the results when products of conception are subjected for that particular, that is chromosome microarray, 24 chromosome microarray, that the products of conception are aneuploidy. Aneuploidy means there is an explanation. No further testing is required, and the patient is sent on expectant management. Expectant management means she can try the next pregnancy. She is lucky, she will continue. Or for that aneuploidy, if something can be done, like ART can be done with, if according to the cause, with donated ova or donated sperm, that can be done. Now, the products of conception are euploid. Euploid means they are normal, means we are not getting any explanation, this. And if with this there is abnormal uterine cavity or endocrine etiology and the antiphospholipid if it is positive, that needs to be addressed. Means she goes to a different pathway. If the products of conception, if no identified etiology so far, if there is no, means the products of conception are euploid, but there is no uterine malformation, or there is no APLA, or there is no thyroid disorder. In such cases, these are the cases which are to be called as unexplained cases. And we have seen that by this particular algorithm, hardly 10% of the cases remain unexplained. And here we consider the added investigations like the thrombophilia testing, which is not a routine test, They say that these 12 tests are not to be done routinely, and that is one of thrombophilia. Consider sperm DNA fragmentation testing, the parental karyotyping. You see, what we do commonly as a first test, now it has taken almost a backseat. Consider luteal phase deficiency testing. Now, to how many? Few of the less than 10%. Consider chronic endometriosis testing, because it is said that infections is not a cause of recurrent pregnancy loss, because they do not survive into the body for years together, where the patient takes time, 2 or 3 years to complete three miscarriages. Consider hysteroscopy, which, yes, it may be done earlier for diagnosis of uterine malformations, but they now say the gold standard is 3D, and if still there is a doubt, then MRI or hysterolaparoscopy. Now, it is not always possible that the patient will come to you at the time of second miscarriage. They may come after third miscarriage, and in this case, if no testing has been done so far, investigate and manage according to above algorithm that is described in the box 1 and box 2. If above algorithm has been followed in previous miscarriages, repeat products of conception, chromosomal testing, and complete full workup if not done already. It happens. The patients, they come after third to you, and earlier no workup has been done. If all possible known etiologies have been addressed and products of conception, they are unemployed, is repetitive, consider expectant management versus pre-implantation genetic testing for aneuploidy. That is for aneuploidy cases. If there is aneuploidy, that is to be done. Thus, a new definition for unexplained RPL arises when incorporating systematic process of conception, cytogenetic analysis as a routine part of RPL evaluation, and according to this definition, you find that the group has contracted to less than 10%. This should decrease the tendency for clinicians and patients to move towards unproven therapies out of desperation. And one of the examples is prescribing progesterone to each and every case with low success and no explanation. To summarize and conclude, I would say, progesterone, though prescribed in abundance, may have a limited role. Natural micronized progesterone needs to be prescribed from luteal phase. If at all you select this drug, prescribe it from luteal phase, which may not be practical and economical in the context of uncertain results. Dydrogesterone is prescribed after confirmation of pregnancy. Cytogenetic workup needs to be modified. How? By introducing chromosome microarray from the second miscarriage, to rationalize therapies by reducing unexplained RPL group and improve treatment outcomes. Thank you all. Once again, I thank Dr. Narwalkar and both the office bearers of the previous and the office bearers of the new year, because my lecture was after Dr. Atturkar took over. Thank you very much, and a very happy new year to 2021. And be brave to fight the new wave of COVID. Thank you.